in class, nice to have a few of you here with me. Most of the people who have signed up for this info lecture, they will, I guess, simply download the recording and listen to it later. The purpose of this is to introduce to you, what this Rave Cartography course is going to be about. And, well, many of you may already know what the Rave Cartography is about, what it comprehends, what it holds. Many of you may not. And but for me, the biggest news is, the change in approach that I want to take in this particular time that I'm going to be doing the Rave Cartography, because I'm going to be doing it in a much more interactive way that I have ever done it. Okay, I was trained by Rahul, who, he was the messenger of the voice. He came with his, shocking information. He delivered, and then he just moved on somewhere else to do the same thing without ever really looking back to see, how good or bad people were doing with assimilating the knowledge, because, well, I guess that was just not his job. He was the messenger. And me as an ego manifester, since I learned it from him, for most of my career, I did pretty much the same. It was not that I ever intended to be the messenger too of the voice in any way. I think it was just my own way to protect myself, to protect myself from becoming anybody's therapist, to protect myself from anybody's personal projections on me, kind of like I was very comfortably hiding behind the knowledge. It's like I wasn't selling Alok, I was selling the knowledge, and the knowledge that I teach today is the same knowledge that I was teaching for the last 28 years. Now, I guess I have come to realize that whether I like it or not, I am one of the oldest teachers. I am one of the best trained people in the world, and it does make a difference, to get the knowledge from me, or to get it from, somebody that is more recently trained, not by Rahul, who. So I guess it has its advantages, and not only because of the depth or the skill with which I can communicate the information, which is, it's logical, it's mechanical. If you really get it, anybody can reproduce what is logical and mechanical. But what I really saw now is that, I have so much experience in looking at this body graph. I have so much experience in looking at any sorts of body graphs. And, well, I guess that, the things that I can tell people about their design without having to look for much detailed stuff that is pretty much on the surface, it can touch them very, very deep. And, well, I guess the reason for that is how long and how deep and I have trained myself in mastering the surface of the body graph. Exactly what is learned in what is called the general training, and it has come to me. With, it's not that I didn't know it before, but I think it was never properly explained that, the general training should never be seen as preparation for professional analyst training. It really should not. It really should not. I mean, if, I know there's people, they already know they want to be analysts before they did their living your design, which is like, that's a crazy thing, because it's like wanting to be a professional of something that you really don't know what it is about yet, which is, it's always something that raises suspicion in me. But, because we're human, and I know how unavoidable certain things are and projections into the future is like I never really cared much about it. But the longer I'm in this and the more new generations of people I get to train as candidates to become professional analysts, the more I realize this, that most of them, they went into the professional levels way, way, way too early. Way before they actually integrated properly what the general training is all about, And they got all the stuff that they learned in the general training, stuffed up in their head, and they're not living it. They don't really know what it is. They don't really have a feeling of it. It's all in the theory. It's all in the concepts. It's all in the names, and it's all unsubstantiated. In other words, it has no substance when they speak about it. It has no texture, no human texture. It has no three-dimensional perception or descriptiveness. Because they're not talking about a form. They're not talking about something that is absolute. Absolute. It's this or it's that. Can't be both. And it's very different if it is this or it is that, because it's mechanisms. And I got really tired of, having people in the PTL1 and the PTL2 and the PTL3 that did not know how to look at a body graph, in general, just in general, to master the surface of a body graph, which is what you learn in the Rave ABC and the Rave Cartography, the surface, the skeleton of the mechanics, the most important stuff, really, the stuff that you're going to weave the reading around, when you become an analyst. But it's not like you learn to see many other things that are hidden. This is not what being a professional analyst is about. There is nothing hidden. There's not much that remains hidden after the general training is completed, you see. But the general training is the knowledge one needs to challenge the system, not to become a believer of the system. Not to become a believer of what your teacher said, or Raoul Who said, or the voice said, but to see for yourself if those mechanical theories actually stand the test of empirical experience and observation as it claims to do. And if you take the time to test it, what is going to happen is that you yourself will have a chance to complete your own deconditioning. And in trying to complete your own deconditioning, you will discover how deep your conditioning goes. You'll discover why it is not so easy to just go or just live your design. No, you'll discover that there is many, 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 many mental barriers and many layers of mental barriers that interfere with your nature at many, many levels, particularly whenever you're open in your design, but not only. Because it's this openness and the way you hold on to what's the memories of this openness. It also distorts what is defined in you. And you see, if you are a projector anyway, the classical living your design is not enough, has never been enough, was never presented as enough for a projector or for a reflector. A projector and a reflector need to know much more than any of the two energy types if they ever want to have a chance of completing their deconditioning. So you see, the general training for me is about deconditioning. It's just an extension of living your design. It's where you acquire the tools, to support yourself in the process of challenging the automatic pilot with which your own not-self mind has been driving you through life, living in distortion, living in full identification with what you are not, trying to become what you are not. See, it's the foundation of human design. To live your design and to be aware of what that implies, to know the names of the themes, to know what to look for. It's a map. It's a map of the world, but it's a map of the world that you carry in your mind. It's a map of a homogenized world. It's a conditioned perception of the world. It's a homogenized perception of the world, and it keeps you away from your world. The differentiated world that you are here to see and experience. When you are in alignment with yourself, you actually can meet the world through your signature rather than through your distortion. Through the lens of peace rather than the lens of anger, if you're a manifestor. Through the lens of satisfaction and the simplicity of that satisfaction, rather than the lens of frustration, and the complexity of the excuses and justifications for that frustration. That's what the general training is about. It is basic tools to work on yourself, to be your own therapist, to be your own guru, to be your own master at every possible level, to be able to challenge your mind with logic, using your own intelligence to recognize what you yourself and can empirically observe when you know what it does to have this or that center open and somebody defining it for you through this or that channel, through this or that circuitry. To have the names of everything, which is what is learned in the Rave ABC. And then you come to Rave Cartography, and in Rave Cartography, you learn the four views, what's called the four views. And the four views, there's still any analysis that you want to make. These are the four views of the synthesis. These are the four views that allow you to create an image of a human reality. Any human reality is built out of these four views, four mechanical views. Each of these views, emerges as an expression of a certain mechanic. It's all mechanic. Then again, there are centers of awareness. There is consciousness involved. Okay, but the way the consciousness works is mechanical too. You saw that in the ABC, how it's structured, the fuel, the potential, the possibility, the expression. You saw how these potentials for awareness are just streams that are parts of a much larger circuit, of a much larger function. So beautiful to see, how it all flows together and how it is all held together holistically by the magnetic power of the magnetic monopole. It's all in these four views. So, you get a design like this and you put it through these four views, and you see everything you need to see to have a clear sense of what kind of human is there. What are they made of? What are their general characteristics that are reliable? What is vulnerable in it? And if it is your own design, well, these four views allow you to penetrate, into your own body-mind structure at levels that are spooky, because this is really getting to know oneself, which always starts with knowing that you don't know. It's what we saw in the Rave ABC, that knowing is always fueled by not knowing. It's always refreshed by not knowing. It's how it expands. It's how it keeps us, thinking in undecisiveness. Well, the keynotes that we learned in the Rave ABC, the mechanical structure of the body graph, how it all works. So these four views are just tools to not get lost in the ocean of information that is there on the surface of any body graph such like this. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 different channels. Now there's a hierarchy between these channels, let alone that this is a single definition. So what does it mean, What's the psyche of a single definition compared to the psyche of a double split definition, or the psyche of a triple split definition, or a quadruple split definition? How does the psyche, mirror that structure in the form? And whatever the definition is, what is it made of, Some definitions can be single and simple, where all the channels, for instance, are part of the same circuit. Or, like in this case, you can see there is all three different circuit groups present there. So we have one collective channel, and we see that this is the one that provides the identity. We have one individual channel, and we see that this is the one that, is the most individual and therefore provides the deepest differentiation in the being. But then we see that there is two tribal channels. So we see that the tribal circuitry obviously is the most dominant. And not only that, we also see that there's not just a majority in number, but that actually, the authority, the definition that carries the weight and the responsibility of making decisions for this being, that it's also tribal. So we know that, fulfilling the tribal demands of their design, that this is where it all starts. Without this, then the individuality cannot properly function. And the collective aspects of this design cannot properly function. It has to start from, the mating that brings transformation and the transformation of mating. It has to start from there. So, we have a way to look at the life force, that we can then hierarchically structure and understand, where the power of this person lies when they are operating correctly, when they are responding, and when they are responding out of emotional clarity, not emotional blindness. We see that they're a generator, but look, there are 1, 2, 3 different channels defining the sacral. So there's 3 of them, making them a generator. Now, how do you know which one is the boss? Which, by the way, when this person responds, there's all 3 of them are responding. When this person responds out of emotional clarity, she is not only taking care of basic personal needs, but she's also responding in the most self-empowering way And within that self-empowering response, there is still a determined availability and openness and readiness to share the experience with others, driven by full determination. But it all has to wait until the emotional clarity establishes that there is an irreversible response, that it's kind of, let's go, and then, to hell with the consequences. In other words, there's emotional clarity. It's not going to be an ideal drive, because life never is. But you also know that you will not regret it, no matter how it goes. Because that's what emotional clarity is. So, this is one of the views. The type. We have the definition. What is the definition? Is it a single? Is it a split? Is it a triple? And how is the life force distributed in the three different circuit groups? The next one is to establish, which of the definitions present in the life force of the design, which are the ones that define the type. Because with the type, we come to the holistic frequency of the aura. The moment we have the type, we are beyond what is defined and what is open. We have a tool to orchestrate the life. So, then you may have cases where, in the case of generators, it's very frequent that you have more than one channel that define the sacral. So there should be no doubt for you as to which of those channels for anyone completing the Rave Cartography, as to which of the channels that define the type carries the deepest weight, which of course always has to be the one that carries the authority. In this case, we have emotional authority. Okay, so we have an emotional movie that is fluctuating from pleasure to pain. So we know that this is someone that's going to be unstable, that's going to be aware of how unstable everything is. And that is precisely what colors their strategy, their emotional strategy, to be the most natural thing for them to play hard to get, because things are never just what they appear to be. Because nothing is just what it appears to be. Because everything is in permanent change. Because as an emotional person, that's the principle that you're here to remain in touch with. Evolution. We are the spearhead of evolution. The last breath that you take is the spearhead of evolution. The last breath that you take is what links the moment before with the moment after now. It's all in the breath if you're an emotional person. Now there's a view. That's a very important view. What is the authority? How does the emotional authority move in life? And how does any other form of authority move in life? And of course, the profile. The profile would be the fourth view. And, not because it is last, but because it is actually the umbrella that integrates all the other views. In other words, that the profile is present in the definition. This is a 3-6, this is a martyr role model. And this combination, this is going to be present in how this person, look at this root. Okay, the 38 and the 39, this is a root that wants to be an example for others. Wants to be seen as an example for others. And look at the 48. It's part of the definition. It's there. This is a martyr personality. This is someone that's always ready to adapt. So they adapt in intimacy. They adapt in power. They adapt in transformation. They adapt in, the discovery. They are designed to adapt or not. They're designed to adapt until they no longer adapt. Until they rigidly oppose further adaptation, because that's how they keep their own balance over time. Now we see that this is someone that has a very powerful lesson to learn. Their personality sun is in an open heart center and is in one manifestor channel. So this is someone that's designed to think themselves to be a manifestor. And in a world where all children are trained to become manifestors, you can bet that this is someone that's going to go for that and spend, at least the first 30 years of their life blindly initiating, intimacy that doesn't work, transformation that doesn't work. That doesn't work in the sense that it does not bring satisfaction. I'm not saying that it doesn't work in the sense that it cannot make the person richer than they need to be, but whether they does not mean that it will bring, the satisfying quality of intimacy and trust. That is the only thing that can really empower this person to love themselves and to deeply relax themselves to be who they are. So that's, just very, very basic views that allow you to kind of look at anybody's chart, knowing what matters, and ignoring everything else. Not that it doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter that much, This is kind of like the filling material of any good story, but this is the fundamental skeleton. What you can see through these 4 views. And of course, we're not just going to go directly into the 4 views. This is actually something that comes pretty much at the end of the Rave Cartography process. And, I like to crown it with introducing what is known as the cross of life. But first, what I do is that I introduce each of these views separately and very, very deeply, the technical aspects of each of these 4 views. Okay, so there's going to be a great deal of time dedicated, for instance, to study the profiles. It's just that this time around, I am not going to teach the 12 profiles, which I have done dozens of times in 4 different languages. And I have recently discovered that it is much more profitable, both for the students and for myself, if I give access to the students to the theoretical information that I already have recorded from other times, and instead of wasting the time that they pay me for in repeating what is already done, that I just dedicate that time to deal with their questions and in regard to the information that they have previously downloaded. So, every week on Saturdays, for instance, the participants will download, let's say, the recordings of the right angle profiles, okay, which is basically 1 full day of work. And then on the Friday after, 5 or 6 days after, so you had time to listen to that material, even if at the speed of 1 session per day, because there is several sessions in the right angle profiles, that then you can come up with questions, in other words, not just the explanation that you have to process in a hurry, but you have time, you have had time to ponder. And you have, you can write your questions down, you can bring them with you on every Friday. And of course, questions may come up later. So it's not like we're gonna have about 12 weeks, where you can, the questions that come up can be brought live to the classroom. And what's best is that, I will not just answer the questions theoretically or in a general way. I will actually put the design of the person that's asking the question on the screen. So, and answer the question through their specific example, because this way it all gets not just much more substantial, but we actually get to see how those theories actually work in real time, in real life, which of course turns this aspect of the learning into, a very, very powerfully transformative process that can surely support you in your deconditioning, any of the participants in their personal deconditioning. So, there will be a whole study about, each of the 12 profiles. Okay, I'm not going to bring up now the slides that I have, of course, prepared for them, the slides that I have been working with from the beginning. And the same thing, there is at least a whole day that's dedicated to, the theme of definition, what are the basic characteristics of single definitions, and we look at different examples of single definition or double split definition. What do they all have in common, even though they can be very, very different in their structure, or triple split definitions. They can be so different from one another in how they appear on the surface of the body graph, and yet they have certain things in common. And those things, well, once you know them, they really add, a lot of substance to this three-dimensional sense that you get of anybody's design. When you see it's becoming alive because you understand what each of these views represents, and well, it's just, once you practice a little bit with merging them together, then you understand how our holistic nature comes about, Type is a construct that is already well known, but, the theme of the authorities is treated in depth, the different kinds of authorities and, the general guidelines that we need to have in order to understand how different it is, to be someone that is designed to make emotional decisions or to not be emotional. 50% of human beings are emotional. The other 50 is not. And amongst those that are not emotional, there is many and different forms of inner authority that are available, and they're all explained in their nuances, so that, whenever you meet one of those cases, or if you yourself are one of those cases, then you can really understand, there's the different places within our nature where we can be very subtle, recognize what our body determines to be correct for you, or not correct for you, based on your own perception. This inner authority, all forms of inner authority, they're rooted in the body. They are an expression of our body's consciousness, our body's intelligence, not their personality. And once, all of those isolated views are properly introduced theoretically, and they're substantiated, through your own examples, then we move into the cross of life. Okay, and the cross of life, well, it's not the incarnation crosses, but it's in a way, it's more organic, because the cross of life is made of, the sun above, the earth below, the south node behind, and the north node in front. It's basically where we all are at any given moment in our geometry. The nodes mark our line of geometry, This is where I'm going. This is where I'm coming from. And this is where I'm standing. This is my line, anybody's line of geometry. Here you see the design crystal and the personality crystal, and you see what they do is that basically through the agency of the magnetic monopole, this brings the red and the black together. It aligns the conscious and the unconscious, the body and the mind to the same line of geometry. This is our life. This is what makes our life different from anybody else's life. Is when you get your chart, this is where you see it. The sun and the personality sun earth, the design sun earth, the personality nodes and the design nodes. And because the gates and the channels that they are in, you already know what they are. To whatever extent you have understood them, you have met them in the Rave ABC. Well, there is nothing essential about any design. And once you understand these four views, there is not much more you need to know in order to be able to penetrate, the essential structure of any human being for yourself. To have a sense does not mean to have a detailed understanding of it. No, but to have a sense and to have a rather clear sense for yourself, of who that person is. It may be your partner, it may be one of your children, it may be a collaborator, it may be a neighbor. What do I know? Just someone that comes in and out of your aura regularly. It's just, someone that you can recognize by what they trigger in you, how you get conditioned, and how healthy or not that conditioning may be, depending on who you meet, when you meet them, where you meet them, and how do you deal with them. Because this is in the end, the purpose of this knowledge is to bring it alive in your own personal life, to bring it alive in your own personal relationships, to bring it alive within yourself. It's not so much about telling your relationships, oh, you're a generator. No, it's not about telling them. It's really not about telling them. It's about having a sense for yourself. Does it explain anything to you of what they do to you and what you do to them? And why they react to you, because of what you do to them. And when I say what you do to them, I'm not saying you do this willingly. By design, you may be a defined route and they may have an open route, and you're just gonna put them under pressure. It does not mean you want to. I mean, I know that, I put everybody under pressure if they don't have their own defined pressures, because that's who they are. I'm just like they used to tell me in Pune when I you're so intense, you're so intense. And I was like, what? Intense? Because see, for me, there was no other way to be than intense, Anybody with the definition in the two pressure centers is intense. What to do, what to do. It's a gift, it's an invitation too. So, I'm going to deal, basically, participants are going to have access to the full range of information like I have always done, exactly the same, but they will have actually double amount of time with me, one in pre-recorded format and the other in, having direct and personal feedback, in what all of these things mean for them and how they can assimilate it, and using obviously as much as possible their personal designs to illustrate the mechanics that I am trying to convey. Let me see if there is anything else that I need to share with you. I don't think so. The sessions that we will have live every Friday, they will be anything between 90 minutes and 2 hours. Okay. So there will be plenty of time to deal with everybody's questions and answers. Okay. Oh, Abid, you got me there. I don't remember now which is Wednesday, which is Friday. I know I have different classes on both days. I don't remember now. It may be that the cartography is Wednesday. Sorry. I mean, yeah, but it's on the website. Okay, and what's on the website is correct. Sorry. For me, it's just, I'm going to work both days. And I didn't look it up before coming here. Sorry. I know that Thursday is Living Your Design. That I know. But then I have the PDL2, and I think it's probably the PDL2 that I do on Friday, and this was placed on Wednesday. You are correct. Okay. All right. Well, what else can I say? If anybody here in the classroom right now does have any question, I can open up the microphones for you. Okay. Let me see if I can do that. I have switched to meetings, so any of you could now, if you want, fetch the microphone and ask if there is anything you'd like to ask. And if you don't have anything now and it comes up later, you can always write it to me to this address. And the same is valid for those that will download later the recording, and after listening to it, if you have any question, practical or as long as it relates to human design, you're welcome to write to me. Especially if it is questions about is it correct for you or not to sign up for this process? Okay. So, nada más, as we say in Spain. This is just informative. I want to keep it short and simple. And, there will be time for going into the detail of all of this. Okay, so that's it for now. I thank you all for being here, sharing this little journey with me. And I look forward to meet those of you for whom it is correct, in the middle of the sea when we are sailing these mechanics and taking them through. Until then, enjoy the flow of your movies. Bye for now to all of you.